Hi, my name is Vanessa Singh. I'm majoring in web design and development, and I'm going to be presenting my showcase for the course of Project and Portfolio 3 in Full Sail University. Starting with week 1, an assignment called Article Feed, where the requirements were to store data in a local array or it could be also the option of having the data stored in an external file. The page header needs to be changed, and I use the for loop to update the following information, which is the article main image, the article title, and description in 3 values. And for my project, I use a theme of a restaurant, specifically a page of the restaurant website where it is promoting all the restaurant's event and sales. For my code, I first tried to have the data extracted from an external file. Unfortunately, this was quite challenging for me, so I opted out to for the option to have the data stored in a local array, and then where I obtained that data from the array and subscribe it to a variable where I then um, attach that into the HTML. In week 2, the assignment is called Image Gallery, and as you can see, is basically a slide shows where every time the user press the next or previous buttons, the data or the image and the information update. So in this theme, I chose a cat. I was going more for a adoption website for cats, and I used it at event listeners to achieve this. So the similar to week 1 assignment, I had the data stored in a local array, and I attached the add event listeners to the next and previous button. So every time the button is clicked, it will go into a function. They will read the code that's in the function, which is basically provide the next item in the local array that I had is stored. The most challenging part in this assignment for me was the query selectors, because I wasn't very familiar with this syntax. It was very hard to me to understand which exactly element is the one that's being selected. So when I thought that I was selecting one tag, it was actually selecting another tag. This is where using the dev tools in Google Chrome, like using the breakpoints and washing certain variables, that's what mostly I use to be able to see what exactly is the element that's being selected. So for week 3, this was actually the assignment that it was quite entertaining to do, the form validation, where I still kept the theme about cats, but this time is validating the user inputs. So I changed the background, I changed the title, I changed the paragraph, I updated the placeholders for each input, and I disabled the submit button to only be enabled only if the validation checks are approved, meaning that the name, email, and phone number has to be filled in. If they're left in blank, the submit button remains disabled. And I created validation errors for every single input, so it will pop up an error message every time the user left an input in blank. And if all validation passes, a thank you message will replace the form, letting the user know that their input has been submitted. So for this code, the very first thing I did is changing the background and changing the placeholders. I put that all in the top to separate it from the bottom codes. That's where basically where the action happens. Lastly, week 4 API fetch request. This was by far the most challenging assignment in this course. I had a really hard time finding out an API that could work with my project, but luckily I was able to find one, and that was the main requirement for this assignment, to pick an open source API and use ES6 fetch syntax to connect and retrieve at least 3 different types of data. I kept the cat theme, and where I use a cat API to obtain this information and applied it into my project. For this assignment, I pulled 6 different data, providing 6 different image, 6 different cat breed, which is correspondent description, and also a read more button that when pressed, it takes the user to an external website. So this is the site where I obtained an API key and the link to be able to obtain the data. Okay, so what I did to achieve this is I obtained 2 links. One where it provides the cat data, the breed ID, which is what I needed to be able to pull out the images. I fetch the data from the first link, and then after obtaining the JSON data, what I did is I used a for each loop. So for each item in the JSON data, in this case I only limited to 6, for each item inside the data, it will call in a separate function. Inside the function is where I'm fetching the second link, where I am obtaining the image, the name, description, and a third link for the read more button. Though this assignment had quite challenging features, I think what made it so difficult was finding a correct API and understanding how to use that company's API, because I felt that each link that I checked, each company had different requirements to be able to use their API. So that part was actually quite challenging for me. Overall, I had quite fun this month because I could finally see my projects coming to life and users being able to interact with it. My advice for future students of portfolio and project and portfolio 3 is to make time, and if you haven't do so already, learn to uh, manage time, because there is tons and tons and tons of research, tons of lecture video to follow, that it could be overwhelming, but if you take or make time for each research, that will be very helpful to complete the project sometime. Because what makes a project, or to my opinion, what makes a project a bit challenging, is that the lack of knowing what to do, how to do it. And even though there's lecture videos that shows you how to do it, you have to understand why is it being done that way. So make time, do your research, and overall make sure you're having tons of fun. Because if you're not having fun coding, then why you're here then, right? Thank you for watching.